Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I'm Kate Seeley, Vice President for Arts and Culture here at the Middle East Institute. And it is such a delight to welcome you to tonight's opening of Maximal Miniatures Contemporary Art from Iran. And it's so great to see so many people here tonight. It's very special. Thank you so much for joining us. This show is a real highlight for the Middle East Institute's Arts and Culture Center. My colleague Lynn Snedge and I have been trying to put together an Iran show for 5.5 years now, ever since our gallery opened in September 2019. And as a think tank, we talk a lot about the politics of Iran, but we say very little about the country's rich culture and art, which often challenges the politics and certainly transcends it. And so we've wanted to do a show forever because Iranian art is so wonderful. Because it's been enjoying so much visibility at major museums in the U.S. and the U.K., and because we've also wanted to engage the DMV's very active Iranian-American community. And we felt that culture was the best way to connect and bring people out to the Middle East Institute. And so tonight, I just want to recognize the many Iranian-Americans who are here tonight. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for spreading the word. Please tell the community to come see this very beautiful show. Now, getting back to the story of this show, after many stops and starts of trying to get this show off the ground, we were finally introduced to an amazing curator just last year. And it turns out she was the perfect curator for this show. Her name is Donna Harnapishe. And in just 9 months, this show fell into place as though it was meant to be. Donna is an associate curator at the Institute for Contemporary Art in Miami. She did her PhD on modern Iranian art and literature, and she'd already been thinking about the use of the Persian miniature genre by contemporary artists. And so this was a perfect fit. She was a curator looking for a gallery. We were a gallery looking for a curator. And we feel so fortunate to have met Donna and to be working with her today. She's put on a beautiful show, as you have seen, and you'll see more when she gives a tour later. So thank you, Donna. This show is going to generate so much excitement and enthusiasm and dialogue, and we feel very, very lucky to have it here in our space today. Here. And I also want to congratulate Donna for having just been awarded the 2025 Vilcek Prize for Creative Promise in Curatorial Work, which comes with a very nice purse, so that is such an honor. And we're proud to be associated. And I also want to thank our International Art Advisory Committee member, gallerist Layla Heller, who's got galleries in Dubai and New York, who introduced us to Donna, as I said, just 9 months ago. She's advised us for many years. She's got several artists in the show, and she's also a partial sponsor of the show. So thank you, Layla. She's not here tonight. I think she has somebody from her gallery represented, but we're very grateful for her support. Another one of our sponsors is the Persianate Global Network for Women's Economic Empowerment, which promotes women's earning opportunities and showcases their social and economic opportunities. I want to thank the director of that, Farial Galadari, for her organization's contribution, and also to Nadere Shamlu for facilitating that. Thank you so, so much. And of course, a huge shout out to Lynn Snedge, the director of our Arts and Culture Center, who worked hand in hand with Donna, bringing this show to fruition. None of this would happen without her. And of course, as luck would have it, it was a complicated show. We brought in artwork from Toronto, Dubai, London, Istanbul, Los Angeles, New York, all over the place. About 2/3 of the works in the show are for sale. I see many of you have the price list, so please consider purchasing a piece. You'll be supporting an Iranian artist, which is a great thing to do. The show will be up until the end of May, so there's plenty of time to bring friends and family. We're open every Monday through Friday from 10 to 5 p.m. We're also open until 8 p.m. on the first Friday of every month. We're part of the DuPont Circle First Friday tradition. Hundreds of people come in off the street, encountering Iranian and Middle Eastern art for the first time. We give tours. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So come next Friday. We're open till 8. We also do lots of group and school tours throughout the duration of our shows, and obviously teach about the Middle East through these tours. In fact, next week we have an 8th grade class from St. Andrews coming. So reach out to us if you want to do a tour. We're happy to tour you. We do programming around the show, panels, book talks, podcasts. to animate the show and keep people coming. On Sunday, March 9th, we're partnering with the National Museum of Asian Art at the Smithsonian to air a very wonderful film by the famous Iranian filmmaker Abbas Kiarostami, Close Up. So it's a chance to see this film on the big screen at 2 p.m. It'll be followed by a discussion with a famous professor who's just written a book by Abbas Kiarostami. So keep an eye out for that flyer. And a thanks to Chase Robinson, the director of the National Museum of Asian Art, who's been encouraging this partnership. As for tonight's program, we're going to talk about the show in the works with Donna and two of our artists, Aravan Khosravi and Parinas Alesh. Both ladies have flown in just for this event. We're very grateful to have them here. And of course, very, very grateful to have your work in the show. Thank you for participating. The panel will be followed by a reception. We have food, we have wine. You can take wine into the gallery, no food in the gallery. And then Donna's going to give a curator tour at around 7:15 if you want to learn more about the artworks. If you don't have time, we have wall labels that give you lots of details, but I don't think you want to miss the tour because it's going to give us a lot more details. Now, before we turn to the panel, I just want to welcome tonight someone very special in this audience. He's MEI's newly appointed CEO and president, Ambassador Stuart Jones. And he joins MEI after an illustrious career in the U.S. Foreign Service as ambassador to Iraq and Jordan, among many other posts, followed by a career in the private sector. And this is his first MEI art opening. And we're so delighted to welcome Stu and his wife, Barbara, tonight. And we hope to see you at many, many more. And I know Stu would like to say a few words. So please, Stu, I'd like to hand the podium over to you. Thank you.
Well, listen, I will be very, very brief because I know everybody wants to hear from the panel, but this is my first event here at MEI, and I just want to take the opportunity to welcome all of you. Thank you for coming. We're delighted to have you. We're very proud of this show, and I also just have to give a huge shout out to Kate and to Lynn for all the work they've put into this. You know, this kind of exhibit, for those of you who are familiar with the think tank community, this is a unique experience in think tank world. And this is a big differentiator for MEI. And we're so proud to be able to have this capability precisely because you come to see us. And we're delighted to have you. So thank you very much. And thank you also, Donna. Again, thank you for making this all possible. We're so proud to be working with you. And welcome, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, and I just want to get right into it. I want to welcome you again, Donna. After many months of hard work, it is wonderful to be sitting down with you and with the participating artists. I just want to introduce you very briefly, all of you, before we get right into it. Donna is Associate Curator at the Institute of Contemporary Art in Miami. Donna curates global exhibitions in modern and contemporary art. In addition to her curatorial work, Donna is a scholar of comparative literature and critical theory and has taught undergraduate courses in global modernism, post-colonial studies, and aesthetics at UC Berkeley and Georgetown University. We are also joined by Aravan Khosravi. Her practice investigates the aesthetics of ancient Persian miniature paintings, which were originally used to illustrate folkloric text. Aravan's practice is linked intrinsically to her life experiences, and she views the visual arts as a vehicle for cultural transformation. Parinas Alesh has cultivated a multidisciplinary career in painting, poetry, and filmmaking. A global citizen, she has lived and worked in the United States, in Switzerland, and Iran. Her artistic style is rooted in storytelling, blending visual and literary traditions to explore themes of memory, history, and cultural identity. Welcome to all of you again. I think you can sense the warm welcome from the room. Donna, I'm going to turn to you first. Maybe you can start by framing the show for us. Talk to us about the title, the number of artists, the number of works, and the story that the show tells.
Sure. So Maximal Miniatures is a show composed of 13 different artists. each artist approaches the miniature in an inventive and a new way, reimagining its form and composition, the stories that are told. And part of why I was so interested in thinking about the manifestation of the miniature across the works of contemporary artists is because I was interested in the relationship between text and image in Iranian art history, in West Asian art history, and how it contrasts with European art history, in which the visual world and the written world is very much distinct. Whereas in the Iranian tradition, text and image have always been embedded. And so what this means is that poetry, mythology, battles, epic narrative, all of these things are part of the way that visual imagery is constructed. And so that kind of brings me to the maximal part, which is that in terms of the images of classical miniature paintings, they themselves have always been really maximal in terms of how they're full of ornamentation and intricate detail, the ways that there are so many perspectives within the image and so many different scenes of actions, and time and space are kind of really, a part of the image. And so I was interested in the way that, artists like Parinas and Aravan and many others in the show are also then themselves taking this maximal quality that is inherent in the miniature and doing something more with it, playing with scale, playing with new colors, focusing on different details, perhaps bridging the past and the present by thinking about how history is related from the past to the present.
Absolutely. The works are all very different, and that's a great segue to my next question to you before I go to our artist. There's a strong connection in the show between the past and the present that ties all of the works together. Could you speak a little bit more about that relationship, particularly in the genre of the miniature, and maybe give some examples of how artists in the show are doing that differently?
Yeah. So I think it would be impossible to talk about the miniature without talking about the Shahnameh, the Book of Kings, and the way this epic narrative was so significant to creating a sense of Iranian national consciousness, to the preservation of language, the many stories and battles, and how much this has become, just a part of Iranian identity. And so you see the way that artists working today from the modern and contemporary period have always returned to these stories, and they think about the lessons, the stories, the characters, and how they can tell us something about the present. There's one artist in particular that I want to point to as an example, and that's Farideh Lashahi, who is really, a pioneering artist in the 20th century who's returning to the miniature. And while her works in the show are kind of bringing together abstraction and figuration, and you, on first glance, wouldn't feel like you could, see a story in there, she's actually, in one of the diptychs, there's a face of a woman surrounded by this kind of natural celestial world. It's a scene of action. There is a horse who is trying to escape, a bird flying away. And Farideh has written about the figure of Rudabe, the mother of Rostam from the Book of Kings, and how Rudabe was a very agentive force. She was an empowered woman. She was an actor, a witness, a protector. And while Lashahi made these works, in the wake of the Iran-Iraq war, she was thinking about the figure of Rudabe, her continuing force, and that connection between, the Rudabe of the Shahnameh and the Rudabe of the present, and and so on into the 21st century. So you see how these stories and the way that they translate into images have this continuing power over time.
Yeah, there's so much to peel in every single artwork in that show, really. And I want to segue to our artists, and I'm going to go to Aravan first. Aravan, you are presenting 3 works in the show: Listen, The Mirage, and The Touch. Could you speak a little bit about those works and then maybe help us tie those works to your broader practice?
These 3 works that are included in this show, for me, there are like a turning point in my studio practice that I found out like an idea and tried to expand on them. One of them, for example, like a Listen, it was the piece I made during the lockdowns, during the pandemic. And I didn't have enough space and enough like things to work on. So that was one of the first examples that I made paintings that are constructed out of multiple panels. For me, it started a whole new path to move forward. In terms of the content and the subject matters, they're all, as you in the introduction you referred to, all my work is reflecting on my memories from Iran, and I was born in Iran and spent most of my life in Iran after the Islamic Revolution. So this idea of like the contradiction between the tradition and modernity is something that's always sort of is within our DNA. So that's one of the aspects that when I'm working in the studio, my mind is occupied with, which in these 3 works you can see. Like there are references to Persian miniature paintings, there are references to more modern ideas and modern era issues, and the protagonists in the paintings, they're mostly women. And I get a lot of inspiration from miniature paintings. And in those works, there are some examples like Rudabe's story that women have very strong presence and agency. But like some other examples in art history, women lack agency or are not depicted the way I think they really deserve. So in my work, I tried, and you can see examples in these pieces, I tried to subvert that notion. So women have more, like, stronger presence, even like proportionally to what is surrounding them, the buildings, the other figures in the paintings that are larger, to sort of subvert that notion of lacking agency. And also the other thing that these works, I started my answer with, like having some breakthroughs in these works, like turning points. One of them is that use of shaped canvas, because I'm always thinking about not just the conceptual and subject matter, but also the formal and the aesthetic concepts around the work. And these, like for example, the work titled The Touch, is one of the first times that I used these shaped panels, and it was inspired by how in miniature paintings there is always like there were 2 picture planes to work with. One was the page of the paper, because they were mostly made to accompany a story. And then there's another picture plane which the artist decides to paint within that rectangle. And there are some moments that some parts of the painting is growing out of the second rectangle. And for me, a way to translate that visual narrative into my own work was to make shaped panels. So the shapes and the figures, they sort of grow out of the restriction of that frame that you can also read into it more metaphorically.
Like the red lines and the red threads we were talking,
these are there are 2 examples in these works that I use this symbol of red lines. In one I use actual red lines, in the other it's like painted lines that create a shape, like a silhouette. And when I was thinking about my memories from Iran and I wanted to paint what I felt, I realized that in Iran there are a lot of red lines you should be aware on an everyday basis you shouldn't overpass. So I thought I can paint those red lines in my paintings representing that. But I don't want these works to be interpreted, all these symbolism, just to be limited to that experience or that geography or that specific memory or incident that was for me like the point of departure. I prefer if like audience coming from all different walks of life have their own take and their own interpretation, because unfortunately it's something global and everywhere, like we're at there. These are like struggles that women face every day. I hope to create this global.
Thank you. They're certainly, they transcend Iran and their beautiful, very feminine work. I want to transition to Parinas. Parinas, you are showing this beautiful work that is hung on our window, that draped. It's like hanging on, and it's entitled Remembrances of Things Past, and it's from your series. I love the name of the series, Amnesia of a Forgotten City. And it depicts an empty dining room in a home in Iran, and you can almost walk into that dining room and sit on one of those chairs. Maybe you share with us, your interpretation of the work, and maybe tie it as Aravan did your broader series.
I've realized that whenever there is an artwork or a book or a poem or anything presented by an Iranian, Iranians who witness that artwork are always questioning that artwork to figure out what happened to us. So it's so that really informs me what happened, and I realized that I'm very interested in history and the preservation of history, and that without it we cannot move ahead sanely without knowing about the past, about our history, basically. So this series happened during also the lockdown in COVID. I was lucky to be able to work. I ran out of material, hence whatever I could find. And it became a mixed media series, and it really focuses on the fact that what happened to us in Iran, or happening all over the world through war, greed, expansion of cities, what's happening in Cairo, because I'm half Egyptian, so that's of interest to me. They are getting rid of the history very systematically. If it's not bombed, it's destroyed to build malls and new buildings and so on. And then I noticed that in Kashan, in Iran, there are these groups of women who are spending their own money renovating these old homes and trying to rescue these from destruction. And they fight for them and they rebuild them. So I started focusing on this series on the importance of history, that if we know our history, we would protect it. We wouldn't lose it so easily to nonsense. So I thought buildings are witness to history. They hold our memories, our photographs, our trunks, our clothes, and so when they get destroyed, so much of it is lost, which is our stories of our grandmothers, of our fathers, and so on. So I began painting these homes that are destroyed in Beirut, in Cairo, in Iran, and they each tell intricate stories, because I am ultimately a storyteller, and I love to paint these basically miniatures in gigantic scales, as in the tradition of the storyteller curtains that they would hang in villages, they would tell the story to the village and then roll up the curtain and go to the next, open it, and tell their stories of Shahnameh or whatever. But then because I love miniatures, Iranian miniature so much, that I made these miniatures and these little tiny stories in giant scale. And I don't frame the paintings because the stories continue outside of the frame, and so you can actually imagine. The viewer can imagine whatever they want. There's this half a horse walking out. Where is it going? So you can actually imagine where that is going. And so basically that was my focus for this series. And because I have a literary background, I love to use poetry, use other people's quotations. They're all written in the back also. Whatever I think, it's written in the back. But also I use newspaper because newspaper tell us of the history of our background, of the little stories that happened so many years ago. And I love the fact that you can read the paintings. And sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it's random. And you see images and you can imagine whatever you imagine is legitimate. They're not nostalgic. I don't believe in nostalgia, but if it makes you nostalgic, that's totally fine. So, and I believe in moving forward, and these are all bright colors. My paintings are very bright and happy, even if they are violent sometimes, and they depict destruction. But they're not meant to be sad, and they're meant to be moving forward to a good future. So I'm forward-looking in that way.
That is fantastic. And that is a good note to move forward, because I am going to soon turn it over to you. So if you want to be preparing your thoughts for a question, I am about to ask Donna my closing question. There's so much to talk about, but this is a stand-up room and we don't want to keep you too long. We want you to go back in the gallery and look at the artwork, and it's a night of celebration and networking as well. So as I ask Donna her last question, if you have some questions you want to think about for the panel. Donna, there's so much more we can say, but we have an audience here, and I want to ask you, as somebody who's thought about these things and you've written about them, and now we have this beautiful show that graces our gallery. What do you hope the impact of the show will be, and what do you want our audiences to take away with them tonight?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that one of the things that I would like you all to take away is really about the way that you look at the works. I think that miniatures are these works that could be just relegated to a classical period, but clearly they're not. They're something that has this living power in the present, and poetry is such a big part of that. So I think when you look at the works, if you can approach it, because miniature gives us all of these tools to look, these tools in perspective and so on. If you can approach it the way that you might approach a poetic verse, linger, meditate, return to it, try to see it from these different angles, then you can find, I think, in all of the works in the exhibition, all of these, these new perspectives, the more and more you return to it. I think none of these works are works that you can just, look at once for a moment. They're really works that should be reckoned with, and they're all telling a really important story.
Wonderful. I before turning, I want to thank my panelists for this lovely, and I think we can take like 2 questions, or if there were burning questions from the floor. We have mics in the room that can circulate if anyone would like to ask our artist or our curator. Otherwise, I will invite Kate to help us transition to the next part of our show. Yes?
Hi there. I had a question about the connection between the diaspora and art in Iran, current state. Can you kind of, or lack thereof, can anybody, it's open to the panel, anybody talk about that kind of connection or maybe separation between what's going on in the diaspora and what's going on back home?
I have a burning desire to talk about this. Sorry. Because I met this person. I was urged to meet a person who's a art book writer. So I met her, and very kindly, nicely, I thought, I asked, "Oh, you write art books about Iran?" And she immediately said, "Not the diaspora art." And that just stunned me. I finished my coffee eventually and left. And then I've been thinking about it and thinking and fretting over this question, like, what am I? What am I? Because I go to Iran, stay there quite long periods, then come back to Framingham, Massachusetts, and work. And then, so how do I place myself? And then I bumped into a collector who's a European collector, American European. When I said, "So what do you think? How do I answer this question?" And he said, "Well, you know, it's very funny because for years, my wife and I were going to Iran and collecting these new emerging young Iranian artists, and we have a huge collection of Iranian art. And then all of a sudden, these young emerging Iranian artists are running away. And they're no longer in Iran. They live in Germany, Switzerland, America. So what is our collection? Is it a diaspora art? Is it an Iranian art? How do we?" And he said, "It's nonsense. Don't fret about it." So I'm feeling really good for 3 days now. And unless you can convince me otherwise, art is so universal that if it speaks to whomever, I mean, I had a show in Cairo. I can't tell you the reception and works that I sold in Cairo were about Iran. So if it appeals to you, what does it matter that you work in Framingham, the most boring place to be, or you work in Sharak Gharb or downtown Tehran? If it has a appeal, that's what matters. If you like it and it speaks to you, that's the important thing. And if you can live with it, of course. So that's my take on that.
Thank you.
I think that's it. Oh, one more question. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It has been incredibly inspiring. I have a question. When you look in the past, any kind of genre of art has been always male-dominated. And what amazes me is this explosion of women in all forms of art and all forms of expressions in Iran, particularly since the revolution. Can you talk a little bit about why is it that women are now so much more present, so much more active and visible in the art scene of Iran?
Who would like to take that? Donna, do you want to reflect on yours, or do you want to?
Yeah, I try to be brief. I think one of the main things that artists do, and this desire they have to speak against the power, and I think those part of the population who are the most prevented from expressing themselves or suppressed, they are those people who have the most courage to react, to push back. So that I think that's something like normal if like women have more things to say or react or push back to prove, to talk back at the power. So yeah, that's
to prove, to push. I think I again had a conversation with my mother during the Zan Zindagi Azadi. I had an opening in Dubai, went to Iran. And she was so stunned and awed at what the young women were doing, and she was blown away. I said, but why are you so surprised? I mean, these women, 19, 20 years old, they didn't just grow out of nothing. You were behind. I was behind that, and then you and your mother, and we've been pushing. And we've been trying, and and there's this explosion now of trying to say what you have to say, and courageous, and whatever that is there is really by women pushing. Otherwise, it would have been totally different. Iran is the way it is because of women and young people but women not yesterday. Women over the ages have been pushing and doing this. It's not a recent thing. You may not have realized it, but you've been pushing.
Yeah, every generation
Absolutely.
standing on shoulders of
Absolutely. And now it's urgent. So
Yeah, and we have seen this across the region. We closed a photography show of, Arab women photographers and Iranian photographers photographing other women. All against diversity. So maybe we can have a round of applause for all the women.